Good morning or good afternoon, depending on the place of Asia or the world you are in today. I'm going to share my screen once again to dive into the BATX webinar that we are launching today for you. Let me just take a second to share my screen. Here we go. So just to dive directly into the very hot topic, last week in China was the biggest e-commerce festival called 11/11. November 11, it's called the Singles Day. It's a festival that has been launched by Alibaba a few years ago, and which is the equivalent of the Black Friday in the US. It's a one-day event during which for 24 hours there is a lot of discounts, and it's a very good indicator of the dynamism of the e-commerce ecosystem in China and of the power of the BATX. So just to give you the data from last week, so Alibaba, the main e-commerce player in China, has been able to garner some 25 billion US dollar of sales in just 24 hours. To give you a comparison, the Black Friday in 2016 resulted in 4 billion US dollar of sales in the US market. So we are talking about eight times bigger revenue figure for Alibaba in China for this year. Two figures that can help you also to understand what we talk about. The first one is that 90% of these 25 billion US dollar come from mobile commerce, mobile payments. Those goods and services have been purchased on the mobile app of Alibaba, Taobao, and Tmall in China. And also a figure that I just discovered last week. Everyone talks about Alibaba thinking that it's the main giant in China. Actually, the number 2 platform in China for e-commerce called Jidong, JD.com, who is invested by Tencent, the T letter here, has done about 19 billion US dollar of sales. So it means that the number 2 of this market is getting grown very fast and is now just behind on the heels of Alibaba. So we wanted just to share this figure to introduce this webinar about the BATX, and our vision is that the BATX is the new GAFA. I think you are familiar with Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. Today we want to talk about the journey that made those giant technology companies in China able to grow so fast, and what we think they are going to do in the next few years in terms of vision and strategy. A little bit about myself. My name is Martin. I'm French. I'm 34 years old. I'm based in Singapore for the last 4 years. And I run a company called Innovation is Everywhere, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more in a minute or so. This is the second webinar we do. The last one was also on China and gave a little bit of perspective on the field where we feel China is eating the world and getting a strong advance. AI, robotics, energy, even politics. In a way, we were talking about that fast-growing country and the way now they are expanding. So the company I have been running for the last few years is called Innovation is Everywhere, and we are at the crossroads of innovation, change management, and design. The very strong belief we have in our team is that what happens in Asia today is very important. Many of our clients, Fortune 500 for the most of them, still see the US and the Silicon Valley as the center of disruption of the world. They look at the key trends coming from Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, SpaceX, all these big American companies that we are very familiar with as Westerners. We feel that today, the 4 billion people that live in Asia are growing much faster. And whether you talk about mobile, about digital, about the millennials, about the smart cities, about the fintech, about the AI, many of these fields are actually going much faster with much bigger volumes when we come to Asia. And of course, China is the elephant in the room that we really love to talk about. 3 ways of working that differentiates us, I would say, from other companies. The first thing is that we take a lot of time to analyze what we call the disruptive Asia. We cover a lot of events. We go to the main technology, digital business events of Asia, in China, in Pakistan, in Indonesia, in Myanmar. We want to be on the front line of innovation, and we talk there with a lot of VCs, of big companies, because if you Google some news about those big ecosystems, you don't really find a lot of information as you would find on the Silicon Valley or even London, Paris, or Berlin. So we really are on the ground very much, and we love to really report on whatever trends we see happening, big trends with a lot of volume. The second thing is that we work in a field called digital transformation. So our job is really to help our clients to learn those new trends, to change the way they work, to be faster and more agile, and to launch new services and new business models. And it's even more true in Asia, where the behavior of people is different, the channels are not the same, and there's a lot of markets to conquer, but there's also a need for local innovation and local adaptation. The third thing that we do very well, I think, is the network of key connectors that we have been garnering for the last 2 years in Asia. We have been talking with the top VCs, the top entrepreneurs, founders, experts, chief digital officers, GMs from many big companies, and we bring those people in our boards, in our learning expeditions, and in the format that we deliver to the clients. So we don't have the, ambition to be experts in all the Asian countries, but we know very well the people that can bring a very insightful value and insightful information for anyone who's interested to go into those markets. That's the end of the sales pitch. I'm sorry for that, but that's part of the game. We are going to dive into this webinar now. The 3 questions we want to answer is why those BATX are so big today, how did it happen, why the GAFA are not so present in China. The second one is what are the differences between the GAFA and the BATX. It's not exactly the same business model and the same story. And also the last one is what kind of new paradigms we feel the BATX are fostering today, and that we think are going to have an impact not only in China and in Asia, but at a global level, because they are going very fast overseas as well today. So the BATX emerged from the fact that China has been very protective of their internet industry almost since the time that they have discovered the internet. So I think you are familiar with the concept of the Great Firewall of China. It's a technical infrastructure that enables China to control totally the information and the type of business that can be online on digital in China. So usually when you are from another country than China, you see the Great Firewall as a censorship tool. Oh my God, they don't allow people to get as much information as we can in the West. But it's also a way to protect a fast-growing internet industry. And I think that the strategy of China was to understand that there will be digital giants in the world, and they didn't want to give all their data and all their consumer relationship to American giants. I'm European, and I complain every day that in Europe, we have not been able to protect the local tech industry. And today, as some experts would say, we are a colony of the GAFA. All the data, everything we do online goes into US data centers. China managed to protect a lot their country. It's also a big polemic, a big debate, but at least it enabled the local players to grow very fast in a protected market where Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon have been either banned, either censored, either their life has been made very complicated in China. So if you go today to China and you don't have a VPN with you, you cannot access WhatsApp, you cannot access Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all these services. I think the Great Firewall is even stronger today. For example, last month, there was the Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. It's a big political event that happens every 5 years. And it's very clear that at this time, you cannot even access those web services with a VPN. They really make a total clampdown. So in a way, when you go to China and you try to browse online, it's a parallel universe. You are not with the same services. You are not with the same ways of paying for bills or for products online. You are not with the same logos and everything. So it's really a total different experience in terms of user experience, in terms of brands, and in terms of what you can do. So it's very isolated, but today we also see that it's moving overseas and abroad. If we make a comparison between the GAFA and the BATX, let's try to look a little bit at the big numbers and how they look alike. Very often, when we talk about the BATX, we tend to say that Baidu is the equivalent of Google online. Search engine marketing with advertising and pretty much the same business model. You can see that Baidu is pretty small compared to Google today, and it's one of the Chinese companies that doesn't go very well today. They have a lot of competition from other players in China. Alibaba is often compared with Amazon. They are extremely big in China and now overseas as well. They don't work exactly the same way. Amazon, as you know, has fulfillment centers. They really sell everything themselves. Alibaba is more a big platform where big companies or individuals can sell their products and their services. So they really act as a giant marketplace, but they don't really own the product or they don't have a fulfillment center for that. Tencent is one of the most fascinating Chinese companies, often referred to as the Facebook of China. As you will see, it's a little bit different, but Tencent is the publisher of WeChat. WeChat is the main app that Chinese people use every day. I think they just reached 900 million people using actively the app every day. It's a combination of what would be for us WhatsApp, Uber, payment system, booking of movie tickets, payment solution, all in one. It's very smart, and they also do a lot of money on gaming and other types of services. Xiaomi is the letter X of the BATX, is a smaller company as well in hardware. They have launched smartphones who look a lot like the smartphones from Apple. They are also not that big, and I think they are going to be maybe not so big in the future. They used to have a lot of media coverage the last 2 years, but now they have probably reached a ceiling in terms of growth. So in a way, we want to say also that the X of the BATX is the X factor. It means that it will be another company that will come with the BAT alongside them, a big one. But let's not say that X is only Xiaomi for now. Just for you to compare, so you can see a little bit the main figures in terms of revenues. So far, the American companies look bigger, but they also have been established for a little bit of longer time, and they work globally. What's amazing is that the BATX have only China market for now, for the bigger part, and they are at the time of their life when they are going overseas now. A little bit of focus on each one of these letters. So Baidu is traditionally described as the search engine of China. They really look a little bit like Google. As Google, they make 90% of their revenues from online marketing services, advertising services, paying to be at the top of the listings when you request for a given product on this Chinese internet search engine. They have been founded in 2000, and the key founder is called Robin Li. So we also want to share with you who are the people behind those big companies, because more and more you will see them in tech conferences and abroad. As you can see, they don't really have another line of business today. So it looks like that when you go on Baidu. So as you can see, it's pretty similar to Google in terms of design. But one of the challenges of Baidu is that a big part of the online advertising revenues they had in the past has been transferred to Alibaba. So today, for example, Alibaba makes more money on online advertising keywords than Baidu does, because most people are actually going directly to Alibaba for their shopping experience. They don't go to Baidu first and then they go to Alibaba. So Alibaba makes more money on the original Baidu business model than Baidu does today. The vision of Baidu and where they want to be saved in a way is to go into AI and into driverless cars. So if I'm not wrong, last year Baidu put something like 15% of their global revenues into those two fields to try to take the lead in AI and driverless cars. They have hired very, very big names in those two fields from the US, from Microsoft in particular. So far, it's still a big bet. There's no real business model that stands out of it, but they really try to take the lead in one field, which will be very big. So again, it's quite similar to Google in terms of vision. They want to be in AI and driverless cars, which are also the two big bets of Google today. Alibaba Group is the giant company. So the total market cap today is about 550 billion US dollar. So they make the biggest part of the revenues from the payment services that they have. So if you ever pay for a good on Alibaba today, on either Taobao or Tmall, two platforms of e-commerce that they run, there's a good chance you will pay with Alipay. It's a payment provider, and of course they take a transaction on all a fee on all the transactions that go there. Ant Financial, the small ant that you can see as a logo on the left, is a new subsidiary of Alibaba, which is for giving loans to people for buying or selling stuff on Alibaba as well. So it's a little bit of a different business model, but this business unit is already big, of $60 billion of market capitalization. So it's a very huge kind of service. The few other things that Alibaba is doing is in content. UQ, that you can see on the chart, is the equivalent of YouTube. And so, of course, they try to move a lot into other fields than just pure e-commerce and pure payment company. So today, if you use the Taobao and the Tmall apps from Alibaba, it looks like a quite common shopping experience in a way, except that you have the size of the Chinese market behind and the fact that they were the first to be there. And tomorrow, where Alibaba wants to go is to be stronger in the payment. They are being heavily challenged by Tencent's payment system, which is called Tenpay or WePay, which is integrated to WeChat, as we're going to see in a second. So Alibaba was the dominant payment provider even 2 years ago with 80% of the market share. And today they are back to only 50%. And there's a good chance that next year or in 2019, Tencent will be the #1 on the payment service. So as you can see with Baidu and Alibaba, they have a very big position, but which is also challenged very fast by local incumbents and local players. Tencent is the company we are the most fascinated by, not only because we use WeChat a lot whenever we do business in China to pay, to contact people, and to really do a lot of stuff that we do with email or with very old school digital technology when we are outside of it. So originally, Tencent built a service called QQ in the early 2000s, which is the equivalent of ICQ or MSN Messenger, an instant messaging platform that would just pop up on the side of your PC for you to continue to communicate with your friends. After that, they launched a series of games. One of the challenges was, now that we have all the internet population of China in QQ and after in WeChat, in the messaging platform, how can we be sure that they are going to stick onto our platform? So they launched a lot of gaming services and a lot of value-added services. So today, what is very fascinating with WeChat, if you use it, is that you can see on the left the number of features which are bundled in just one app are very diverse. So today on WeChat, you can buy a movie ticket, you can pay for your bills, you can do, of course, phone calls, you can invest. So you have like a mutual funds and wealth investment feature, which is built in WeChat. So I don't know exactly who manages your money, but in China, you can manage it directly from WeChat. They, of course, have the social network, a little bit like Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. Mobile payments is a very big feature of WeChat. Today, if you go in China, in Shanghai or Beijing or any city, you will pay everything with your phone and a QR code from WeChat. And it begins to be a little bit complex to pay in cash today as a foreigner in China. You can do group buying, you can book a cab, free messaging. In a way, all the services that we use outside of China in different apps, they manage to integrate it in one single platform that everyone is using for a very diverse range of use. The vision they have for the next few years, though, is to move into even more value-added services, in particular in healthcare. So we are going to talk a little bit after about iCarbonX, which is a startup in healthcare, where Tencent has also an interest and a stake. They really want to be bringing the value of predictive analytics and predictive healthcare to the Chinese consumers, of course, through WeChat, which is the go-to place for any digital behavior or need that Chinese people have. For Xiaomi, so it's the X for now, but again, I think that there will be another fourth tech giant in China very soon, either from e-commerce or from healthcare. So Xiaomi has been making a lot of noise 2 years ago when they were competing face-to-face with Apple. They designed a lot of smartphones, a little bit cheaper than Apple, but with a very good quality for the Chinese markets. They have also tried to be selling those smartphones in India and Southeast Asia. So they really had this intention to conquer outside of China the emerging markets, which are the backyard of the China today. They have reached a kind of ceiling and not doing too well today. But it's also to show you that I think it was at the time one of the unicorn of China, and they reached a market capitalization, market valuation of more than $40 billion in just a few years, very fast. I think, if I'm not wrong, it's the fastest, biggest unicorn that has ever existed. No one managed to reach that valuation in such a short time. So today they ship and manufacture this kind of product that you can see on the left. And the vision they have for 2020 is to be a key player of the smart home ecosystem, providing all the smart devices such as air conditioning systems, air purifier, and these kind of things to make all your home a little bit smarter. Something which is interesting when we take a look at the BATX is not only the business they do, but the way they do it. And I think there's three things that we notice in terms of culture, which are a little bit different from the GAFA. So the first one is that there's a very strong business Darwinism inside those companies. It means that many teams are competing in Alibaba, in Tencent, in Baidu to release new features and new products. Some of the teams don't know that other teams are launching similar products. And the vision of those companies is that only the best one will emerge and will manage to get the attention of the users and, of course, to generate revenue. It's a very cutthroat, very rough, very violent environment of business. When you are an employee in those companies, it's a very competitive industry and environment. So you can really be kicked out very fast if the feature that you work on, the product you work on, is not working. There's about 8 million graduate students entering the business life in China every year. So there's a lot of people very smart that can enter and compete. So it's a very, very strong competition. The second one is that those BATX are very strong in data and AI. One of the reasons is that in China, there is less pressure, I would say, and less will on the privacy rights of individuals. So if you are outside of China, usually there is a lot of laws and regulations around data privacy for the consumer, for the citizens, and those big companies outside of China cannot mix all the data they want. In China, it's very porous. The border between companies are not so big, and they can really foster thousands of data on each individual, which will give them a big head start in terms of AI. If you hear the thought leaders today that talk about artificial intelligence, they tell you that only the GAFA in the US and the BATX in China have enough data to really make systems smarter and to feed the AI algorithm with enough data so that they really manage to detect patterns and be more smart. It's very likely that AI will be a field where China will be ahead of the US very, very, very soon. The number of patents that the Chinese companies are applying for AI is almost at the same level than the US, and it will be much bigger just as of next year. The third feature of this big BAT is that they have a capability to integrate many features, many services in one closed ecosystem. It's not so different from the GAFA, except that it's done at a scale and with such walls that are very, very big. If you take WeChat, for example, it's really a go-to app with everything included. Today, Alibaba tried to play catch-up by integrating a lot of content, a lot of AR, a lot of new strategies to really bring back the user into a very dense, very rich ecosystem where one or two players will manage all of your life. Outside of China, you will have a different actor for your e-commerce, for your social media, for your career management, for your wealth, your education. In China, it's very concentrated in very big ecosystems. So there's 1-2 big players, mostly Alibaba and Tencent on those two. A few tips maybe to go in a more practical level if you are interested in this Chinese market and these Chinese big companies. The first series of tips is more if you want to go into the Chinese market yourself. Usually the type of questions that our clients might have is about the Chinese brands. Should we come with a foreign brand, or do we need to adapt and to localize with a local brand? Today, a company which is interesting to watch for that is Airbnb. So Airbnb tried to enter the markets with their US brand, and now they are considering entering with a local brand designed specifically for the Chinese customers. So again, for some categories, the foreign brands will always be very powerful. You can think of luxury, for example, but now the consumer of China are very sophisticated, and all the ecosystem is pushing for having local brands conquer the local market and then go overseas. And if you take Huawei, which is one of the biggest smartphone makers and telecom equipment provider, they are number 2 or number 3 in smartphone markets in many markets in the world. So it's really happening. The second question when you go to China is how to work with those BATX, which are very strong ecosystem. They have access to the consumer, they have all the data, they are always keen to partner with you, but most of the time on a very imbalanced way. They will not give you access to all the data of the consumer, of course, and they will want to get a lot of data from your side on your company, on your product, on how it works. So it's always a big challenge to work in that ecosystem where 2-3 players are having a highly dominant position, and they are not here to be very open. They're really here to get your skin in a way and make the most in terms of business. If you are not considering going into China, but you will need to face the Chinese consumers going into your market or the Chinese companies coming also to your country, there's 2 things that we think are interesting to take a look at. Localization, how do you help Chinese companies and Chinese consumers to understand your market? So if you work in travel, for example, is your business ready to accept the way Chinese want to pay online or offline? Do you have something on WeChat, like a customer service? So how do you localize part of your business to accept the behavior and the specific needs of Chinese consumers who work and behave with different platforms, as you have seen? The second one is to offer something special. So Chinese consumers highly value the fact that they show that they have a specific attention from the world. They are with a strong need of recognition. So try also to see how you can engage those consumers with specific promotions, specific discounts that they can really be happy to show off and to brag a little bit about. Now I'm going to share with you to finish 3 new paradigms that we think are coming from the BATX and who are going to roll over the world. The first one is the disruption of retail. As you have seen in the first slide with the 11/11 e-commerce festival, almost all of the retail is going to happen soon online in China. So Alibaba have pushed on 3 different ways to try to mingle the online and the offline. The first picture you can see is a convenience store where Alibaba is providing a lot of tools to help them to digitize their stock, their SKUs, their supply chain, and the payments. So, of course, they always want to attract people on their online platforms. But one of the strategies is to help local convenience stores, local supermarkets to be able to be digitized with their own tools. So, of course, Alibaba gets a lot of data from that, and there is a different levels that those shops can have. So the one you see, for example, they even have the signage of Tmall, which is Alibaba's biggest e-commerce platform. So they are almost like an Alibaba store physically. Just below, what you can see is Hema. It's a grocery store which has been opened by Alibaba. They have about 8 pilot stores today, and they really want to understand how the retail exists from when you are a purely offline retailer, and what kind of technology can you put to make that experience more engaging than what the retail is doing today in China offline. And the third picture that you can see on the right is the experiments they do with augmented reality. So they really want also people to come back to the stores offline through the Alibaba platform. And here what you can see is an AR card branded for Pizza Hut. And when people see that card with their phone in augmented reality, they can have a discount that they can claim at the local nearby Pizza Hut store. So they really try to bridge the offline and online world with a lot of tech that they have or that they experiment with. And today they really blurred a lot the line between the two. So it's very commonplace when you think of Amazon to think that they are going to kill the offline retail and to bring everyone online. Here, Alibaba is a little bit different. They know that something will always be bought offline, and they really try to take a grip on that sector as well. The second paradigm, which is very important for the app development and app ecosystem, is that in China, both with Tencent, WeChat, and with Alibaba, they try to do it so that you don't need to download any other app than their own to do all the range of needs that you have today. We have seen with WeChat, which is what you see today on the screen, they have all sorts of mini apps, mini programs. They are almost like apps, except that they are built inside the WeChat platform. So it means you don't need to really build a specific app for your business in China. You can directly integrate it within the WeChat ecosystem. Of course, by doing so, you give access to Tencent to the data of your customer, but that's the way you can reach 900 million very connected Chinese consumers. The impact on that is that, and Facebook is looking a lot to it, how can you get rid of the apps? Because I don't know for your experience, but it's not so convenient to have so many apps, one app for one need in your phone. You need to update them. You're not going to them every day. So from a business perspective, it's not so easy to decide on what should you do in terms of apps. So in a way, what is happening in China is that there's no more apps. Everything is happening in the main messaging app or e-commerce app of Alibaba. And this is really a trend that Facebook is trying to copy. For example, if you take Messenger, Facebook has been trying to input in Messenger some e-commerce, some taxi booking, and some other group kind of function so that you can live more of your digital life in just one app. So that again, you have less need to go to the app store and to download a specific app for a specific need. So the death of apps is something that is probably going to happen worldwide in a few years, and it's going to happen first in China. So it's a very good laboratory in a way to see how it happens there. The last one, which is probably the most far-reaching, the most crazy, and the most impressive, is the system of social credits that China is running with the BATX. A few years ago, Alibaba understood that they had so much data on people selling and buying stuff that they could devise a credit system to assess the credit worthiness of people who buy or who sell. It's not very uncommon. In the US, it's called the FICO score, F-I-C-O. It's a score that tells a lender what is your capability to contract a loan and to repay for it. In the US, it will be based on your banking transactions and what type of repayment do you do. In China, Alibaba said, I have so much data on people buying and selling that I can do this credit score myself. The Chinese government saw that with another eye and told Alibaba, you are going to give me that score and I'm going to make it a citizen score. It's not a joke. Today, you have this citizen score, which is being rolled out. It will be compulsory in 2020. It's already deployed for the students and the doctors in China. Everyone, Chinese citizen, will have one score from 0 to, I think, 850 or 900. It's a citizen score that will give you access to certain rewards and certain punishments. So for example, if you are a Chinese citizen today and you have a very high score, meaning you have a very high social rating, you can go to Singapore without a visa. Because Singapore says, if you are such a good citizen in China, why don't you come for visa-free travel in my country? Because I know that you are doing something good in China. The type of data that is used by the government to create that score is really amazing. They take, of course, the transactional data of your Alibaba account. What do you pay? What do you buy? They take your friends. Who are you friends with? What groups did you join? What do you say? What do you post? What are your conversations? And your mobile behavior. For example, if you play 10 hours of online games every day, you are not going to have a very good score, and your score is going to be lower. On the punishment side, it means that some jobs, some education, some universities, and even some healthcare benefits will only be reserved to people with a high score. So if you behave in a bad way from the Chinese government perspective, you will have less possibility to get a better job or to go overseas without hassle or even to contract a loan. This system is going to roll out in the next few years, and it will be compulsory by 2020. This is not something which is just for China. You really need to understand that it's going to come into the other countries as well. Today, if you travel to the US, the customs can ask you to open your laptop and they can scroll through your Facebook to understand who you are. It's the same process. They want to know and they want to give specific authorizations and punishment to people based on their digital activity. Except that in China, the data is so porous and the government is so strong that they can decide to aggregate all the data of these different BATX and to make it a single score, which is going to give you access to the big things of life: education, wedding, jobs, travel, and everything. So keep it in mind. We will talk a lot about it with new developments. It's something which is phenomenal, huge, and that we think is also going to roll out in some other ways in other countries. Every country in the world wants to do the same, but they also have some data limitations today. China is going to do it first, and it's going to be a global game changer, not just a nice tech or a nice e-commerce global sales at $25 billion. The BATX is also a matter of people. I strongly encourage you to read one of the books that we mentioned a little bit in the next slides. It's a book called China's Disruptors, and they categorize 4 ages, 4 waves of Chinese entrepreneurs. The first one is the old school guys such as Haier, which is the global leader in white goods, kettle, fridge, laundry machine, and all that kind of stuff. The second wave in the 90s are high-standing government official who have turned into business. So Fosun, for example, is a very big conglomerate who have bought over the French travel company Club Med. The third wave is in 2000s. They are the pure players of the online. Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu are all born by those founders who are a little bit closer to the Western world in terms of thinking. They usually speak English, and they have built companies with the aim to conquer China and a little bit beyond. And the last wave of the 2010s are very different. They are companies who are set up by millennials, Chinese millennials, so below 30 years, who are educated in a Western way. They have done their studies in Berkeley, in Oxford, in Europe, in Asia, and they came back to China with a very strong mindset of, we know how the startup works in the US, we know how to do it, and we have a global ambition. So these are the companies that we call the MIDU, M-I-D-U, which might be the competitor to the BATX in a few months or in a few years' time. So just 4 of them that we think can pretend to the title of 4th biggest Chinese company in terms of tech and influence. The first one is Meituan Dianping. It's a merging between 2 services. It's a kind of combination of Groupon, Yelp, and TripAdvisor. So it's a giant in the rating of F&B and of food delivery as well. Very practical service, which is not so far from Uber Eats today. The second one, which is amazing, is iCarbonX. It's a startup on healthcare whose role is to gather a lot of data from different sources to clone, to give you a digital version of yourself in terms of healthcare. And with all the data that they gather, they want to give you personalized recommendation on what you eat, the lifestyle you should have in terms of sports, in terms of exercise, and potentially in terms of drugs and in terms of pharmaceutical products that you should take to revise some of the stuff. They have a lot of access to DNA data, so it's going to be a very big company in a few years' time, which is probably the first one that brings personalized medical advice based on your genetic data and your social data. It's going to be amazing. The third one is Didi. It's the equivalent of Uber in China. They actually managed to kick out Uber from China a few months ago. They are going very big, and now they are integrating a lot of other ways of transportation, such as bike sharing stuff. And they are also investing a lot in Southeast Asia, India. So they are going also a lot overseas. The last one, UBTech, is a robotics company. And the robot you can see has 2 versions, a consumer version and a business version. So the consumer version is a little bit like Alexa, except that it looks like a robot. So you can put it in your home, you can talk to it, you can order on e-commerce with it, and you can just have it as a voice assistant in your home. The business version is more like a customer service officer that can serve you in a bank or in a retail mall, and that will give you access to information and to your inquiries. So these are only 4 of Chinese companies that we take a look at. We think they're going to be very big. There's a lot of other very fast-growing startups in China that can take a lot of market inside China and overseas. And what's interesting is that all of them today have also investments abroad, mostly in Southeast Asia and India, but they also buy a lot of stuff from the US. So Tencent, for example, they have at least 5% of shares of Tesla and Snapchat. So those are companies that you're going to see more and more in your radar and that you need to know about. 3 resources to know more about it. So first, I offer you to have a one-to-one chat with me after the webinar. I will open my agenda for you, and if you want to book, I will have 6 30-minute slots next week and the week after if you want to have a deeper conversation about those slides and questions that might have not been answered in this presentation. The second one that I really recommend you to do for your holiday break, if you take one for Thanksgiving or for Christmas or for Chinese New Year, is to watch that movie, Crocodile in the Yangtze. You can rent it online for $1 on Vimeo. It's the story of Alibaba seen from the inside, and it will show you how Jack Ma built this company from the year 2000 until now, It's very interesting to see how the business in China has grown alongside Alibaba. It's really a very big eye-opener on the culture of entrepreneurship of these fantastic entrepreneurs. The last one is called China's Disruptors. It's a book that has been written by Edward Tse. It's a very good overview of the 4 ages of entrepreneurs in China and how these different founders think of their country, of the business, and what they want to reach after that. So if you want to know about the Steve Jobs and the Mark Zuckerberg and the Larry Page and the Jeff Bezos of China, it's in that book. Very quick read, very good reviews on Amazon, as you can see. I really recommend this one. 3 things you can do next for your organization. The first one is, so that's 3 services that we can discuss with you after that. The first one is a BATX letter that we do every month. So it's a 16-page premium newsletter with a lot of insights, the latest news. It helps you to keep track of what those big players are doing. To be honest, every 6 months, there's something very big and very new that they launch, which is a game changer for many industries. So it's a monthly stuff to just keep you updated on that. The second one is to join us in a learning expedition. So you are more than welcome to ping us to organize a visit of those big companies in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Shenzhen, in Hangzhou. We go there every month or so. We know them very well. And it's a game changer, again, a very big eye-opener to see those companies in their market and to understand at which pace they change and they innovate for China and for overseas. The last one is more something that I think you should be doing in your business, whether you are in China or outside, is to have someone who is your BATX ambassador. Someone who has the view and the strategic point of entry for your company with those players who are going to have a bigger and bigger importance for your business. So it can be a digital expert, it can be a strategic expert, just one point of entry so that you can negotiate and discuss with those actors with a single head to make more influence, of course, for your business. I think that's it. In the appendix, you will just have some data on those BATX. We will take the questions right now. So I will keep being online for a while, for about 20 minutes. You can put your questions on the chat and I will answer them live. Of course, as you can see, we are very enthusiastic about China. Those companies will also face a lot of challenges, but we really wanted to share this vision of the BATX to do a wake-up call and to really trigger for you the fact that those are gigantic companies. They are not China only. They're going to be global in a few months or in a few years. So will be very happy to chat with you about how you can understand them more and how you can connect your business to those guys to make it a fully 21st century company. Thanks a lot, and I will be online with you for the Q&A right now. Thanks again.